And going back to purpose, you know, I always, you read, you hear, you see, purpose driven life, purpose driven experience. What does that mean? Because you can't just put on a cloak of purpose, right? You can't just go out and find it somewhere. You have to live. And when you live, you see that there's a lot of things with meaning in the world that you have not been always aware of, that maybe you should be. And for me, it's not having purpose, it's about every day finding more ways to be purposeful and more ways that I can help make my life more meaningful by helping others where I received help myself, frankly.
Welcome to 99 Humans. My name is Jeff Lakusta, curious coach and Wall Street Journal best-selling author, striving to understand how little things generate big impact.
And I'm Nadia, Carta, tech executive and lifestyle coach with a mission to transform lives and corporations by kindling hearts to generate a zeal for life.
Each week, we investigate stories about the human side of leadership to re-energize your spirit and help you become a stronger leader.
Because the reality is that leadership is messy, goofy, challenging, but always human.
Thanks for spending time with us today. Let's dive in. For the fun
Sure.
of it. Unfortunately, Nadia is not able to join us today, but I know y'all connected and she is the reason that you are here. So I'm sorry about that, but I'm looking forward to chatting anyway.
Wow, I'm excited. Yes, Nadia and I had a chance to meet and have a conversation at a conference that we were both attending. And I told her I am a 99 Humans fan and I was excited to meet with her. And we got to talking and she invited me to be on. And I am honored and thrilled. So thank you.
Well, I know she's sad to miss this, but I am very glad to be the one interviewing you today because no spoilers, but I know that part of your story intersects a great deal with volunteering and giving back to the community, and that's something that I am deeply passionate about as well. And so I'm really looking forward to digging in with you to see how it fits for you and how you balance everything.
Great. I'm happy to share my experience. It's certainly been a journey for sure. The last decade, it's definitely been a journey for me. Something that I shared with Nadia is, you never know what life is going to throw at you. And, very early in my career, as many people can say, I did well. In my 20s, I kept advancing and it was great and I did well and I was excited and just felt like there was nothing I couldn't do, nothing I couldn't be tapped for. And then I had children and the entire world changed because you don't know. The first time I was pregnant, I had a miscarriage. So dealing with that,
Oh, wow. I'm sorry.
horrible story. Thank you. But what it opened my eyes to was there was a whole universe of men and women who had experienced miscarriage, but it wasn't something that was talked about. And so for me, that became a touch point with people. And this was early in my manager career, right? So it was a way for me to connect with people and make it safe to talk about. Pre let's share our story days, right? I was eager to share my story because I was eager for that connection of people who would understand the pain that you can't really express to people, because if you don't go through it, what you hear is it's a blessing. Something was wrong. And that's very hard to really balance in your head. And so my second child,
would it be all right if I
great.
ask you a question about that
Yeah,
moment
sure.
in your career? Because you teased there that this was before being vulnerable and before sharing was cool, which
Right.
what a
Right.
neat world that we live in, just for a minute, that
Wow.
that's becoming cool. I don't think we're quite there yet, but
No, for
how
sure.
did
But
you
yeah,
find the courage and find the passion, I guess, which I'm curious what drove you and why did you speak up then?
what drove me was the incredible pain that I was going through, trying to deal with it and not having any outlet for it that I felt. and meeting that one person who I thought I knew at work, older woman at the time, who said, I had a miscarriage too.
Mm.
And then I shared with somebody else, and all these people I thought I knew at work, all of a sudden it became like so many women went through this, and men. And so the second I started telling my story and having people say I went through it too, or my wife and I went through it, um, made me feel so much better to share that pain and to talk to people and to just hear their story. It made me feel a lot better. It made me feel um, less exclusive, and I felt like I was part of something bigger, and I found a place to put my pain. So that was for me.
I really appreciate you sharing that, because I think the idea of sharing at work, as much as it's becoming a bit more normalized, like we were celebrating a second ago, some of that comes with fakeness too, where,
Oh,
oh, well, what am I choosing to share? And it's like a humble brag here and a humble brag there, and like, oh, I'm being vulnerable, and
yes.
saying it was the pain that drove me is a really, really big statement there.
It was important for me because when people did then share with me their stories, all of a sudden the focus was off me and on them.
Hmm.
Right. And it taught me how to listen. It taught me to read signs in people's faces. Um, and that story gets amplified when I had my second child. Everything was great with the pregnancy, so we were going to have a healthy child. It was great, right? We were excited, only to find out that we didn't. And we had my daughter was born, and we realized very early on something wasn't right. And kudos to our pediatrician. My daughter wasn't even 12 months yet. She said, "Look, I'm going to diagnose her as being on the autistic spectrum so that you can get early intervention now.
Hmm.
Um, and if she is, good on us. And if she's not, no harm, no foul." And she was. She definitely was autistic as she started to grow and mature. And I realized at that point that I had to step off my career path and take care of her. I was told she would never talk. I wouldn't accept that. I was told that her motor skills would be very challenged, and I wouldn't accept that. I wouldn't accept it until I fought the fight.
Hmm.
And so the next 10 years were about her. It was about communicating, getting her to communicate, getting the world to communicate with her, and learning how that is to connect something or someone who is silent, and to bring in noise, right? And to help people understand how to communicate with her. Um, that was a journey, and connecting with other parents who were going through the same things, and having you don't know what you don't know. And I was very certain that I wouldn't, as long as I could help it, if I can inform and educate anybody in that world of how to get help and services, I would do that. And I tie that into my career and leadership, is because during that time, I missed working. I missed my life. I had lost my identity.
Hmm.
I gave it up for my daughter, and I would do it again and again. It was, that the fast forward, and she's completely verbal. She's, 22 years old, completely, her motor skills, not a problem, but it was a long journey.
Wow.
And so when I decided after 10 years I wanted to get back to work, that she was in school and I felt she was in a good place. And my son, who's a year younger than her, he's healthy, thank goodness. But I thought, okay, I'm just going to pick up my career where I left off, and plus in the interim, look at all that I've done. I got to my daughter to this place. I've been volunteering at the schools. I created a special education parents guild because
Wow.
none really existed at that point. And so when I started knocking on doors in 2010, nothing, nothing. Oh, you have a 10-year gap. Oh, I'm sorry. The world has moved on since you last were here. Best of luck. I couldn't get anywhere. And I was really feeling very diminished. And it's funny, I was listening to one of your podcasts about purpose, and something struck me. Um, when I heard, strong body, strong mind,
Mhm.
and at that point in my life, I thought, you know what, I have to just get strong. I'm feeling really weak. And I started running. And I live right near the Palisades in New Jersey, right across from New York City. And I just started out in 2010 running every day, no matter what the weather was, hurricanes, blizzards, fogs, because the worse the weather, the better I felt. Like I was pushing myself. I wouldn't let myself be weakened by my reality at the time. And so the only thing I had then was my story.
Hmm.
And so I knocked on newspapers. Remember those newspapers?
Oh yeah.
Doors, 2010. And I asked them for free, can I write a column about motherhood and the struggles of motherhood? Um, and I started doing that. So I had my own column for a while I was still job hunting, mom to mom. And it was all about the fun and foibles of being, a mother who stepped off her career track and is thinking, I excelled in my career. Am I really going to fail by two little people are going to, the ones that are going to break me? I can't let that happen. My ego can't let that happen. So, and then I started, just an email chain of moms, and what are you going through? What are you struggling with? Oh, you have an interview? I have a suit, you need this, I have that. And so I built this community around me to fill the space that I couldn't fill with work. Um, and from there, I actually got an opportunity to write for Patch, which was a new experiment that AOL was doing at the time. So I extended my column to that. And then I thought, great, I'm getting paid to write. This is great. This is great. And then I got laid off,
Ugh.
summarily laid off. And that actually was the most horrifying challenge at that point in my life that I ever faced, because I always felt like I was in control, that I could always make money somehow. And even if I couldn't get on back onto my career path in human resources, at least I was writing, I was making money, I was doing side gigs through Craigslist with writing and helping people with resumes. I was able to do stuff to fill in those blank spaces. And when I was laid off with 1,100 other people on one phone call, it was very hard to not take it personally,
Hmm.
right? For me, it wasn't a business decision. It was a life decision that somebody else made for me. And I had work. My husband was unemployed at the time. Um, when I thought nothing could get any worse, I saw a sheriff's car come up my block, and I go, "Oh my goodness! I hope everybody's all right. I hope every." Well, they were coming to me to serve foreclosure papers on my house.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I thought, you know what? Okay, called out to the universe. You can move on now. I'm got all the
It
lessons I
already
need.
rained and poured right
Good.
here.
We're good. We're good. And so I took the only job that seems to always be available, and it was literally selling life insurance in Paterson, New Jersey, door to door, mostly at night when people were home. And I look back at that struggle, that time, as being forged by fire.
Wow.
It was not a job I would have picked for myself. I was in a neighborhood where I was absolutely standing out. It was dangerous in some ways. I was going into people's homes I didn't know. Um, and I learned then, feeling very other than and feeling very bad about myself, I learned that people are kind.
Hmm.
People are good. I felt at that time that I was a traveler, and they were treating me with the utmost kindness, people I met in Paterson, New Jersey.
Hmm.
And I remember sharing my story with a woman whose life was so difficult, so difficult. And she said to me, Anne, life can bend you. It could knock you to your knees. It could make your heart break, but it will not kill you, and it will not make you break. And so you get out there and you're going to find your job, and you're going to get, you're going to be fine. You're going to land fine. And it was people like her I met along the way that built trust I never knew I didn't have.
Hmm.
It gave me a sense of optimism about what my future might hold, even though my house was being foreclosed on and I didn't have a job. I was selling life insurance. All I wanted to do was put money in the bank to buy my kids Christmas presents, because otherwise there wasn't going to be Christmas that fall. And that was the point where the kindness of those people I met gave me strength to start reaching out to people saying, listen, I need help. I need a job. I am trying to send the resumes. The whole world changed since I stepped off my path in 2001. You can't even mail a resume anywhere. It's all online. I don't know what black hole it's going into. Um, and so I reached out to people who, some I knew, some I really didn't know. And I also started, that was my big volunteer. I had to fill the space. And so I started volunteering. Um, you know, I started working for a women's shelter, a domestic violence shelter, doing volunteer work for them, volunteering for Meals on Wheels for women who were breast cancer patients. You name it, I was volunteering. Dress for Success, all over it.
And
And that,
in all of this, just to reflect back,
yeah,
first off, unbelievable strength through the story that you've shared so far. You are a leader in the best of times and the worst of times in just the 10 minutes that you've shared with me so far. And that's incredibly inspiring to, in the workplace, find success, be ambitious, but then leave the workplace by your own volition to do what made sense for you and your family, to prioritize what matters most to you, which I hope I have the strength to do in my own life time and time again. And then be a leader there, and then be ambitious there, and seek to serve others. And here you are, your house is in foreclosure, you're struggling to find a job, and you're going, you know what, I really need to give back. Let me volunteer at this, this women's shelter. Let me do this. That's an incredible thing to think, how can I give back in a time like that?
it was that. And more importantly, and quite selfishly, um, it I knew and had validated there are people in worse situations than you are. So as bad as I thought my life was, deliver a meal to a woman with stage 4 breast cancer who has little kids and knows that
Mm,
chemotherapy is not working. Go to a domestic violence shelter where a woman just escaped with nothing but the clothes on her back and her child has cerebral palsy.
wow. Yeah.
You think about these things and you think, you know what? I'm okay. I'm okay.
What's neat about the way you're framing that is gratitude in our 99 humans journey has come up as a leadership quality that the most human, the best leaders have. And in a way, you're saying, this is sort of almost a forcing mechanism to gratitude, where you're going to walk up to the front porch of this person, and that's going to make you grateful in and of itself.
I think you raise a really great point, and you're right. And I think, I am so grateful. But for me, gratitude isn't, for me, it is not a practice
Hmm.
in the typical sense of the word. It is an action verb, right? It is, I can't feel gratitude until I really see how much I have, right? That's meaningful. Things are not meaningful, right? What's meaningful that I have. And when I was doing that, I realized what was meaningful is, as bad as things were, my daughter was still struggling. I was trying to pull a good man out of my son, because he had a sister who all the attention was going to her. So I had to make sure he was okay. And I had a husband who was a great partner. He was going through the same thing. He, went through a period of unemployment, and at the same time, don't recommend it, by the way. But we managed to, and believe me, there were times we didn't laugh. Let me paint a
Oh,
rosy
yeah.
picture. But where we could, we'd laugh, because what are you going to do? What are you going to do? And the most important thing for me was, I didn't want my children to see the pain of the struggle. I wanted them to see the struggle because I thought this is a good life experience. We don't have money to do this. So let's go take a walk by the Hudson River, or let's do something different, right? So I wanted them to see the struggle. I just didn't want them to see the ugly side and the pain of that struggle, which I think in many lives we see that. And in my own life growing up, I saw that. And that's not something I wanted. And that for me was a leadership moment.
Hmm.
right? When everything is going really wrong with that person you entrusted your future with, and he entrusted his future with you, um, how do you lead each other through those times? Because leadership doesn't just stop at the office or begin at the office. Leadership is being patient online in Starbucks. Leadership is when you really look at that person that you've committed your life to and you want to walk out the door and not doing it, and thinking in terms of how do we get through this together? What do we both need to do? Um, and again, back to communication, and so for me, I
That's a gem, just that you're dropping casually, but leadership not stopping at the office. I mean, it comes so naturally to you to share and to be vulnerable because you wrote a column and talk about this. And I can't wait to hear what you're doing with it now because I know you're using this. And that is a really powerful moment worth pausing on because we don't talk about what leadership with your partner looks like, or what
right,
leadership just out in the regular world, because something I've noticed is the world's a whole lot angrier and less patient and less willing to lead after COVID. And all
yeah,
you got to do is wait in the Starbucks line. It's funny you say that because that's my line. That's the line where I notice it the most,
right,
that
yeah,
boy, what
yeah,
happened to our leaders out in the
right,
community? We're treating each other
right.
like dirt much more than we used to just a few years ago.
Yeah, which is why those moments of kindness, small, small, small acts of kindness, have a butterfly effect,
Hmm.
right? It's contagious. And so, I, my experience with my daughter, trying to teach her to communicate and learn how to communicate with her in that world of autism, taught me that if somebody is not communicating verbally, but their body language is telling you all you need to know, um, makes me pause rather than react, to say that person's going through something.
Hmm.
That person, something happened to set that person off this morning. There's something on in their life. I try to be very mindful of that. And so when somebody's really impatient, or somebody seems like, they don't want to be where they're at, I'll always say, you know what, go in front of me. What can I do? How are you doing? And even at work, let's get back into the office. When people get explosive, when nerves are frayed, and when the pressure is on, and being in human resources, dealing with people every day, I feel very comfortable when people have outbursts, because for me, that's a door to open to say, look, let's put the job aside for a minute. How are you? This isn't you. You seem like something's going on. Is there anything I can do? How can I help you? Because people don't, I truly believe people don't wake up in the morning, whether they're people we know or people we don't know, saying, I'm going to be angry today, or I'm going to cut that person off, or I'm getting my coffee first, or, and so I really believe people don't start their day with that intention, but it happens. And so I try not to take it personally. And again, back to my experience when I felt like the whole universe was conspiring to just, put any and every impediment in my way. Um, but then back to getting back on my career, because when I finally got a job, could say KPMG, loved my alma mater, KPMG. That was the most amazing experience in my world for a number of reasons. Most importantly, they offered me a job, and they
How
believed.
did that moment happen? So you had mentioned you're volunteering, you're reaching out to your friends, you asked for help, and now you've got the job. But unpack that a little bit, because that seems like a huge
Sure.
moment.
Oh, it was a huge moment. It was a huge moment. And I even remember the day, November 11th, 2013. For them, I reached out to people, and I actually had a name of somebody to send it to, my resume to KPMG. And very early on in my career, post college, I worked at a law firm in their corporate law, very big law firm. Great experience. And I did some mergers and acquisitions work. And, basically, what does that mean? You're carrying boxes from one conference room to another conference room. You're, reviewing documents for red line. Yeah, it is so manual. And, I was the mule. I was the M&A mule. And know really anything about M&A. But they called me, KPMG, and they said, for our HR team, we want to start a mergers and acquisitions HR team. And we don't have anybody who can do this. And so we see that you have experience. And in my head at the time, I was like, oh my God, yeah, 1995. But instead, there was that little voice inside my head. It's like, you can do this.
Yeah.
You can do it. You got through hell right now. You could do this. So they said, I absolutely feel comfortable. Yes, I have done it. And so prepping for that first interview, I must have spent no less than 72 hours just Googling everything I needed to know about M&A, HR, catching myself up to speed, talking to people I knew in finance, just getting the framework that I needed to speak the language. The
Yeah.
actual doing, we can do anything. We can figure anything out. Honestly, we really can. And especially with all the, I'm going to use Google because I Google everything, right? There's always a way to figure it out. And so I thought if I could just get the job, I can figure it out. And that set me off on a trajectory because when I went there, I discovered employee resource groups. I became a part of KPMG's Women at Work. And that was when I introduced the concept of let's do volunteer work as a network. Let's do volunteer work. So back to my women's shelter, right? Back to, all the other volunteer opportunities that I was participating in. And it was amazing. We brought in 12 women who were graduating from the shelter program, domestic violence shelter program. And we created a program around them. It was a 4-part program, and it was to get them back into the workforce.
Wow.
So myself and this amazing network of women help them write resumes, help them do mock interviews, help them get interviews, and became their mentor, their recruiting mentor. And the most interesting thing I found when we held the first session was these women who I worked with who were very, very senior in the organization, shared stories with these 12 women about how they were abused. And I didn't know this about them and how they were victims of domestic violence. 3 women shared their stories. I would have never known. Partner, managing directors, like big, big, successful women. And for them to share that story with these women who were just starting their journey post victimization, if you will, to say, I can be that. I can be a partner. I can be like, I can do this. You just went through my journey, and this is where you landed. So there was such power in that moment for me. And that also, again, when you think of leadership, them sharing those stories, unprovoked, not asked, it was in the moment, made me see them and their leadership in such a different light. And for me, that was incredible. And then what I learned from there and what I was sharing with Nadia is it was through volunteering, and it is through, through the volunteer work, I was asked to serve on some boards. And so I'm the president of the board of an organization called Bergen Volunteers. We provide social services in the New Jersey area, and also for the Center for Hope and Safety, which is the domestic violence social services and shelter program. And I learned how to be a leader, and how I learned to be a leader through nonprofit service and volunteering is something that is, I call it, it hasn't been discovered yet. And I encourage people that I mentor and whom I've sponsored, make that a part of your curriculum for your professional development. Because if you're looking, the higher you go, the more tenure you have, the less opportunity there is, right? There's only so many manager spots. There's only so many director spots, and it gets narrower and narrower as you get up the chain. And so if you are siloed and you're only working in finance, chances are you're not going to get into a COO role, right? You're not going to be in an operational role. But through nonprofit service or nonprofit board service or volunteering, you can be if you're in HR like me, I've been on finance committees. So I learned everything I needed to know about finance. I was on an operations committee. I ran a strategic plan, right? And for a finance person, they get on the HR committee, they get on the strategic plan. You round out your career, right? You round out what you don't have. And that has been what's got me promoted and had the opportunity to go to other organizations.
I am obsessed with this idea. I think you're right. It blew my mind to hear a little bit about this, and then now to hear you say it. It's such a powerful idea. I think undiscovered's a good way to describe it, because I really think of joining nonprofit boards as like a sequential track, right? Like eventually you reach your Maslow's hierarchy where giving back becomes, about purpose and
Mhm.
fantastic. I'll start giving back. And you're saying flip the script, use this experience, yes, to give back, yes, to have the forced gratitude, and also to get the experience to round out your resume, to help you stand out from the pack and get those promotions, get that job that you're looking for. Can you make it real for us? So I actually just joined, I moved to Atlanta recently, and I just joined the board of the Salvation Army in Atlanta, which I'm really
One of
excited
my
about.
favorite organizations. That's fantastic.
Unbelievable. They do fantastic work
Yep.
for homeless and
Mhm.
sex trafficking. Atlanta is the hub for that, with a big airport. So
Yes.
lots of important work being done. But it was kind of a mysterious process. And I'm wondering if you can demystify it from your own experience of, if someone were to say, yes, I want to pursue that, how would they go about actually joining the board of a nonprofit? How does one do that?
That is a great question. And again, it's the big mystery. And what I've learned since I've been serving on boards is, here's the conversation going on in the boardroom. We need members. Here's the conversation going on in the community. I want to join a board, right? And there's that missing link.
Yeah.
So part of what I've done is I run nonprofit board training sessions. And then I connect people with other nonprofits I know and say, this person just went through my training course. And I don't charge. It's something I give back to people. Um, and also I tell people, find the organization that you like and talk to the executive director. Find out and just tell them, I'm really interested in becoming a board member. What can I do to get on your board? You just ask. That's all.
Yeah.
You like Nike, just do it, right? Because there's such a need for board members. Now, when you get to the big, as boards, some of them do have financial requirements, right? But for the most part, other boards don't, in the way that, you're not looking to write a check for $100,000, but, you're going to be an active member. You are going to help fundraise. You are going to participate in the events that they have. You're going to help spread the message, right? And going back to purpose, you know, I always, you read, you hear, you see, purpose driven life, purpose driven experience. What does that mean? Because you can't just put on a cloak of purpose, right? You can't just go out and find it somewhere. You have to live. And when you live, you see that there's a lot of things with meaning in the world that you have not been always aware of, that maybe you should be. And for me, it's not having purpose. It's about every day finding more ways to be purposeful, in more ways that I can help um, make my life more meaningful by helping others where I received help myself, frankly.
Is that your purpose, helping others, or how would you describe your purpose?
My purpose is simply um, to make the experience of life a good one for anybody I meet. I mean, I feel like we're all travelers, right? I love to read, recovering English major, love to read. And
Love it.
and one of my favorite, any story that deals with, travelers in the desert, right? Or travelers anywhere, and they're welcomed into home. You're a stranger, but come into our home and we will feed you and, hear your stories and send you on your way. I feel like that is life. People come into our lives, they travel through our lives, and let's make the experience as good as we can. And I'm traveling through other people's lives, right? And so what do I want that experience to be? And again, we're living in a very experiential world, right? I want the experience. I want the experience. But the everyday experience of living, we don't really think about,
Isn't that
right?
ironic that we go around saying, "Gosh, I want an experience"? Well,
Right.
you're having one right now if you just sit down and pay
Develop it.
attention to it.
Exactly. So that's kind of my motto, and I think the older I get too, it's like I think of a number of things. I think, the journey I've been through, but I also was very mindful during the bleak moments of my journey is I come from a family of strong women, and I think when you think about who you are and where you come from, and how, the blood courses through your veins. But it is true. I had both a paternal grandmother, maternal grandmother. We're both widowed very young. My maternal grandmother was widowed at 37 with 11 children. Um, my paternal grandmother was widowed at 40 with 8 children. Um, those are hard times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are hard times. And I think if they got through it and they raised all good kids and the grandchildren are great, that strength's in me. That strength is in me. And so I always tell people, like, hearing the stories of your parents and your grandparents and your relatives, it's very important because it helps you better understand the strength that's in you. And so there are times when you're going to need that strength. So good to know that it's there, to pull on.
Yes, I would say you're not just a part of a family of strong women. You are leading from the pack there, and
Oh,
what you've
thank
shared. Incredible story. I'm curious, now reflecting back on those bleak moments, I think you
you.
just called them. How has that changed the leader that you were on that, back to that first child, the
Yeah. Hmm.
miscarriage? You're already a leader, you're a manager at that moment in your life. And now here you are with so many different life experiences, good and bad.
Hmm.
How has that shaped and changed your leadership?
That's a great question. Early on in my career, I always felt like I had the world. When I wanted a promotion, I got a promotion. When I wanted this, I got that. What I learned when I tried to get back on track is, oh, wow, life isn't easy. I'm not always going to be able to get what I want when I want it. Where things came so easily, I could get, in your 20s, you can get a job anywhere, right? You really can. When you're in your 40s, getting back on track, it's super hard, and the lesson I learned in that is, and I'll get into mentor sponsorship. I think where we go wrong with mentorship is that it's so focused on early tenured people.
Hmm.
And my mentorship ideology and what I practice is, look, early tenure kids, they're always going to get mentored. There's going to be a track for them. And not to say we shouldn't have mentorship programs, but how about those people who are coming back on track? How about those people who, for whatever reason, are changing careers or haven't had a career in some time, and whether that they've been on a parent track or a caretaker track, whatever that is. And then what's always missing, I think, too, is sponsorship. And so somebody gave me some great advice, a couple of pieces of great advice. And one was when I was I wanted to head HR. I'm ready now. I want to be a leader in HR. And I start putting my resume out there to all these bigger companies. And I've always had big brands on my resume. And my current CEO of the company I'm at now, which is JDA Technical Services Group, Alex Mortman, he's fantastic. He said to me when he was trying to get me to come to his organization, I told him all the places I was interviewing, and I was in final interview, and he said, "Why would you want to go to a big brand and still be, part of an organization that's bigger than you?
Hmm.
I'm offering you the head spot. You have all the big brands. You don't need any more big brands. You need to lead." And that was amazing for me because I
Hmm.
never thought of it that way. Like, you don't need to prove yourself with big brands anymore. You got that. Now lead, and lead for me. That was a game changer. And also back to sponsorship, I felt at that point in my career, it was important for me not to mentor people, though I do, but to sponsor people. And that also, again, it's not, well, they went through a successful mentorship program, now we'll sponsor them for this. No, it's putting people in front of opportunities that nobody else will, and that's important for me. That's more important than mentorship.
I
Mentorship.
think I just read a stat that basically amounts to women are way over mentored and under sponsored.
Yeah.
Everybody
Yeah.
wants to mentor women. Nobody wants to be the one in the room advocating and putting them in
Right.
front of opportunities to
Right.
lead, to
Right.
actually act and make that more meaningful. I think that lesson that you're sharing really resonates with me. And I am actually in Ohio for my nephew's graduation, which was last night. And it's, kind of this interview and that experience reminds me just how tracked life can be for so long. Actually, you really, you go through all of school, high school, graduation, that's a track. You go to school, you do the things, you get good grades. Even college, very tracked.
Yeah.
Then if you enter into a big company, very tracked as
Right.
well. And so that idea that you're saying that life, the real things that give you the experience, the maturity as a leader, might not happen until quite late in life.
Yeah.
That then you realize, gosh, I really need to make the choices and do things. And I don't just earn the next level, the next job, the next responsibility, the next whatever. And I think that's something that I feel like I'm learning very recently in my leadership journey as well. And it's a humbling experience and a really empowering experience as well, if you can get on the other side of the humbling
Yeah.
parts of it,
Yes.
to go, okay, actually, I'm in the driver's seat. It isn't up to the company to make me happy. It isn't up to my
Right.
team or my boss to do these things for me. I need
Right.
to make these things happen as well. And the way you're saying, you need to lead, you need to have that experience,
Right.
that really is about taking charge, it sounds like, and not just being another cog in a big machine, but really standing out and doing things on your own.
Absolutely. And I'll give you a real life experience. Again, back to KPMG, when I got back on my career path, I was invited to a professional development workshop, and they had somebody there, and they ran an exercise. And you can imagine it was in a hotel conference room, and there was about maybe 200 people in the room. And it was right after lunch, and I literally was running with the pack to get back to the conference room because they wanted to start on time. And I ran through the door. I was like, oh gosh, I wish I had time to get coffee, which was in the back of the room, but she was telling everybody to sit down. So she runs through this exercise. Everybody sit at your tables, close your eyes. I'm going to walk around the room. If I tap you on the hand, just sit at your table and you can open your eyes. If I tap you on your shoulder, you can stand up, but you can't move. If I tap you on your head, you can go anywhere around the room.
Wow.
And she did this in mantra. She did head, hand, shoulder, all. And I got tapped on the head, and I was like, oh my God, thank you. Run to the back. I see all the people in the back. I'm drinking coffee, really happy. Exercise ends. And she said, how did you feel? And the people who were seated but couldn't stand, oh my gosh, it was horrible. We couldn't stand up. Watching people stand and move around. People who stand, it was horrible. We see people moving around. We can't move around. People who are moving around, tell us about your experience. And there was silence. And so somebody who was standing next to me said, well, I have to tell you the truth. I tapped myself. And I was like, what? You what? You tapped yourself? And then somebody else peeked out and said, and looked at me and said, actually, I tapped you because we walked in together and you want to call. And all of a sudden it was like shards of glass just breaking inside
Wow.
my head. And the lesson for that is tap yourself. Don't wait for somebody to tap you on the head to give you permission. Do it yourself. And that's when I started driving the experiences in the employee resource group, running those sessions for, underserved, whether they were women or children, and doing all these drives and all of these, quarterly sessions, especially with women from the shelter, and getting on nonprofit or on boards. I started tapping myself.
Wow. And I could talk to you all day. This is so inspiring. And I love that idea. You may have just given it, but we always end the podcast by asking, when you reflect on our conversation, what do you want to leave people with? What's the one piece of advice that you want to make sure people take from this story?
Tap yourself. Don't wait for anybody to give you permission to do what you know you can. And it may not be perfect and it may not be packaged, but that makes it all the more authentic and makes you a more endeared leader.
It's so true. I love that. Where can people find you if they want to connect with you?
Oh, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, Ann Piccirillo, for sure. My email address, I'll give you the easy one. It's ap@jdatsg.com. And also some of my early writings, my mom writings, you can find on Mom to Mom, MOMTOMOM. It's Mom to Mom columns.blogspot.com. And you can see some of the, it was called actually Motherhood, Merlot, and Madness. So,
So many different angles to connect, from parenting to going through career transitions to joining nonprofit boards to networking in general. So many good angles that we talked about. I'll put all of these into the show notes, so check out the show notes if you want to see these links. And thank you so much for spending time
thank
with
you.
99 Humans.
This
Really
was
love this
wonderful. Thank
conversation.
you. Huge fan. Thank you so much. Enjoy
Thank
your week.
you. Bye.
Bye.